We continue with our discussion on mutual funds under Wealth Management Unit 3. And in this particular video, we're going to talk about categorization of mutual funds and what are the various ways we can categorize them. So broadly speaking, in terms of mutual fund categorization, when we look at categories of mutual funds, they could be based on four broad methods of segregating them. The first method would be essentially based on the underlying investments. What is the instrument in which the fund is investing into? The second one could be in terms of investment restrictions, whether I can invest or get out at any point of time, or whether there are some sort of restrictions that come in. The third is based on my method of purchase. Do I go and purchase it directly on my own, or do I use an intermediary to purchase the mutual fund? And the fourth is based on the tax treatment of the money that I get, and if there is a better way to kind of position that, right? Uh, Within these, the first one is the most extensive categorization. This is going to take the crux of our time in this particular video, which is what kind of mutual funds are available, what kind of mutual funds exist, and how do we essentially put them in different brackets, right? Now, based on underlying investments, you could categorize mutual funds into either funds that invest into equity, or funds that invest into debt, or funds that invest into both, or funds that invest into other asset classes, right? What could be other asset classes? Things like gold, real estate, etc., right? So broadly, there are four major categories, and within those, there are subcategories of funds which are created. Let's start with one by one. The first category we're going to look at is equity funds. As the name suggests, these are funds that would invest in equity markets or equity stocks. They are divided into 4 or 5, 6 major brackets. There are some other names that are also available. Large cap funds invest in large companies, or bulk of the investment is in large companies. Usually, while every fund could have a different definition of how they classify themselves, usually in large cap funds, most investments is in large companies. And what do we mean by large companies? Companies greater than maybe somewhere around 20,000 crore of market capitalization. So these large cap funds will only invest in large company stocks majorly. Then we have what is called as mid cap funds, which are going to invest in mid-sized companies. And what are these mid-sized companies? Anything that starts anywhere between 3,000 to 20,000 crore is basically mid-sized. So predominant investment is in mid-sized companies. Then we have small cap funds, which typically invest in companies the size of less than 3,000 crore. Predominantly, these are small companies, small cap companies that you are investing in predominantly. It does not mean that a large cap fund cannot pick up a mutual fund, cannot pick up a stock that is of a mid cap size. They can. But predominantly 70 to 80% of the portfolio will be in the larger companies that we see, right? Then we have something called as theme-based funds. So for example, a fund talking about rural income or rural consumption theme, right? Or a fund that is based on infrastructure theme. So they could cut across categories of certain, these are multi-cap funds, what is called as multi-cap funds. Why are they called multi-cap? Is because they can go into any of these capitalizations, large, mid, small, right? Also known as flexi-cap funds. There are some general diversified flexi-cap funds, and there are some theme-based funds. Theme-based funds could go into any company that caters to rural incomes, any company that caters into infrastructure, any company that caters into some sort of a theme that plays out, and it could be a large, mid, small company, anything. Then we have sector-based funds, which are like a pharma fund, which invests only in pharma companies, an IT fund, which invests only in IT firms, a banking fund, which can invest only in banks. So we have these sector-based funds as well. Again, they will cut across the market capitalization in these sectors. Typically, it's sector-based. And then there is a category called as equity linked savings scheme, or in other words, it is called as ELSS. Now, under capital gains taxation, these tax saver funds give an advantage in terms of they can be treated under some sort. If you make an investment into these, then up to a certain limit, you can deduct that from your income that is to be taxed, right? So if your annual income is somewhere around 10 lakhs and you invest 1 lakh in ELSS, then you only have to pay tax on 9 lakhs, right? That's the use of these tax saver funds. They typically are multi-cap or large cap funds. They usually don't take too much risk. Standard funds that are there that are considered there. In addition to these, there is something called as an index fund. What is an index fund? An index fund will basically track an index like the BSE 30, the Nifty 50. So these funds basically just go ahead and buy the index that is there. Depending on what the index composition is, you could classify it as large cap, mid cap, small cap, right? But broadly, that's what an index fund would do for us. We will look at these examples in more detail when we start looking at individual funds and trying and understanding some of those funds from a market perspective. That will come later as we look at examples of these funds. But broadly, these are the categorizations that we are looking at. Usually, you invest in equity funds from long-term investment perspective. If an investor is not a long-term investor, equity funds are not suitable for this particular investor. It's not a great idea to invest in equity funds if you're not a long-term investor, right? That's about equity funds. Next, we move on to the categorization of funds that invest in the debt markets, right? There are funds that could invest in the debt securities, debt markets. These are funds which will come under debt funds. Now, depending on again the underlying investment that comes in, they could be divided into two broad parts. The second one are the safest ones, and we'll explain those in a minute. And then depending on what kind of instruments you're putting in, if you're putting in a fixed income bond, any kind of bond, that's a fixed rate fund, right? You can buy at any point of time, you can sell at any point of time essentially, but these are fixed rate because your coupon is fixed, right? Fixed coupon, let's put it this way, fixed coupon funds. There are some funds which are fixed tenure, right? So it will be fixed as 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. These are called as fixed maturity plans, also known as FMPs, fixed maturity plan, right? They can invest anywhere, but they are fixed for a tenure. So the way it works is if you want to invest your money for 2 years, they will go and buy a bond with a tenure of 2 years with that, or bonds with tenure of 2 years, right? So as the bonds mature, your money matures and they give it to you. That's called a fixed maturity plan. In fixed rate funds, you can get out at any point of time by selling it. In fixed maturity funds, there are typically penalties for getting out earlier than the denoted tenure, right? Then you could have a floating rate fund where the coupon floats based on interest rates, based on interest rates, right? Now, why is that useful? If let's say interest rates are going up, if interest rates are going up, bond prices are going to go down, correct? So if interest rates are going up, bond prices are going to go down. So you don't invest where? In any kind of fixed rate funds, because you will get negative returns from there, or you will lose returns from there. If rates are going up, your bond prices will be falling there, correct? Floating rate funds is where you will invest in floating rate funds, right? We will discuss this in more detail once again at a later stage when we introduce concepts and look at examples around fixed rate and floating rate funds, but at this stage this much should suffice. Then we move on to what is called as gilt funds. These gilt funds basically invest only in government bonds. That's why they're called as gilt. Gilt is a term for government bonds. Gilt funds will only and only invest in government bonds, and that's why they're known as gilt funds essentially, right? Usually any kind of tenure can work out, but most of the times gilt funds invest in longer maturity government bonds most of the times. Liquid funds are very short term bonds, and as the name suggests, the purpose is liquidity, right? So they're called liquid funds essentially from that perspective. This could be a bond which is 1 day in tenure that they're investing in, or a month in tenure, but typically liquid funds are supposed to give you money. This is for your liquidity needs. So if you want to invest in the very short run, you look at liquid funds. Similar is the concept of arbitrage funds, just that they play on arbitrage opportunities in the market. What are arbitrage opportunities? Free money, or in other words, riskless money. I'll give you a simple example. Let's say a stock is trading at 100 rupees on the National Stock Exchange and 102 rupees on the Bombay Stock Exchange. You can buy it from the National Stock Exchange for 100 and sell it immediately at the Bombay Stock Exchange for 102. This is 2 rupees of riskless money, because you will definitely make this money, right? That is what arbitrage funds typically do. Because these opportunities are very less, they are categorized as a short-term fund and categorized together with liquid funds in that category. The returns of these funds would typically, in the context of India, vary between 5 to 6% per annum. And that's what the liquid and arbitrage funds do. These are for funds needed in the short term. Floating rate, gilt, fixed maturity, and fixed rate. When you combine these four, the returns would be anywhere between 7 to 10%, depending on what kind of instrument and tenure you have taken. And these are usually suitable for safer, longer duration investments and goals, right? Uh, Remember that these are considered safe if they are held to maturity, because then you know what you're going to get in a fixed income instrument. But if you're selling it in between, then bond prices could go up or go down, and that could create a problem for what is the exact return that you make out of this kind of an instrument. Correct? So that's your debt funds. Again, something that we will discuss in much more detail as we go ahead. But for now, we just need to kind of introduce the concept of these funds that are there. The next that would come is funds with a mix. These would basically be hybrid funds, which basically incorporate equity plus debt in the portfolio. They could have these in any proportions that are there. So a monthly income fund has a little bit of equity and most of debt. A balanced fund has more equity and less debt. And hybrid funds could basically go anywhere. They could have any kind of proportion allocation that can come in. The idea of these funds is essentially to get a flavor of equity returns, but keep risk contained. Why is risk contained? Because you've incorporated a little bit of debt into the portfolio, right? So logically, the risk becomes kind of contained, and that is what funds with a mix are useful for. People who are conservative, just starting. So if an investor is conservative or has just started, this is a good idea. Debt funds are for safer, longer term investments and goals that are strongly recommended or you can't really do away with. So for example, children education, possibly this is a good idea. Equity funds are riskier, longer term investments if you want to kind of build wealth over a period of time, because most equity funds would typically give you returns between 12 to 15, 12 to 20%, similar to what stock markets give as returns, right? That's why the categorization comes in. Now, in addition to these three, there are categories which come as others, right? So there are something called as gold funds. Gold funds could invest in gold directly, or they could invest in gold mining companies. So that's a specific theme. If you want to play with gold as an instrument, you're going to use what is called as a gold fund, right? There are also other funds called exchange traded funds. Exchange traded funds. They can invest in any instrument, but again, in India, the most popular one is what is called as a gold ETF. You also have an index ETF, which means you can invest in Nifty using this. What they do is when you put in the money, they buy Nifty in an exact same proportion as would be the case, and that's called an exchange traded fund. We will come to exact nitty-gritties of exchange traded funds again at a later stage, not really required at this stage for our understanding, but that's what exchange traded funds are. And then there could be funds that invest in countries like Brazil, that invest in countries like China, US, etc. These are all international funds, right? These are all international funds that are basically catering to an investor who's an informed investor, who wants to go and do what is called as a geographical diversification, right? You don't want to be heavily concentrated into the Indian markets. You want to go ahead and go and diversify your portfolios geographically. That is where these guys would come and invest in international funds. Over a period of time, as markets open up a lot more, this is going to be more and more prominent, as a lot of fund houses will come up with international funds that can be used to invest outside India, right? So that's broadly the categories of funds. Instruments where you are going to look at investing in other asset classes. There are some real estate funds as well separately, which invest in real estate. So you could look at those as well. And for very, very advanced investors, there are private equity funds as well, which invest in essentially unlisted companies, right? So these are advanced tools or instruments which are available, and the idea is basically you are going to kind of invest across different kind of asset classes. That's where some of these other categories become useful. Now we need to understand what is the broad risk return characteristic of some of these funds, right? Let's look at those. So if you look at equity mutual funds, right, then you start with something called as a passive index fund. That's the least risky, right? And that should give you the minimum expected return. If you're investing in an equity fund, the minimum expected return should be the index return, whatever index you are tracking. If I am getting a return of 10% in Nifty, I would want a return by investing in a mutual fund that is higher than that 10%. What is the point on stopping at 10% if Nifty gives me 10%, correct? Then I go to large cap funds. These are large companies. So obviously the risk is lower than some of the other instruments, and obviously the return also is commensurate with the risk that is there. Multi-cap funds are the flexi cap funds that we were talking about. They can go anywhere, right? Now they are the next in category in terms of risk, because at given points of time, if you think the risk is elevated, they could go into large cap completely, thereby effectively taking the risk profile to this. Mid cap, small cap funds would follow, which would basically come here, and higher risk, higher return. International funds, though they depend on what economies you're looking in them, but they typically come under currency risk. They could be low risky if you're investing in the US markets, then possibly they could be the least risky of all that you're looking at. But given the currency risk plays out, you would want to probably keep them after the local market that you're in. Then you look at specific themes. Why is the risk higher? Is because if the theme goes wrong, there is nothing, it's not diversified. These funds, the thematic funds and sector funds, are not diversified. And because they are not diversified, either they are strong on a sector like a banking sector fund. Now, if banking does not do well, this sector fund will not do well. So the risks are concentrated to sectoral performances. Similarly, in this case, if overall infrastructure does not do well, your thematic fund on infrastructure will also not do well. So that's the broad expected return profile that you see for all these funds. Obviously, there could be exceptions here or there, but generically speaking, you would follow this kind of a premise. Let's look at the debt mutual funds now. Now, debt mutual funds would typically start with liquid funds, which are typically for needs of a day to a few weeks, right? Then a few months, that's the case. Uh, Again, a few months, that's the case. Then you go to FMP, which is fixed in tenure. Usually 1 to 3 year kind of FMPs are available. Then you have dynamic funds, which can basically go anywhere, fixed and floating. You can have income funds, which are again kind of usually fixed, but they keep increasing in tenure, right? Let's try and understand them. Liquid fund, very short tenure bonds, 1 to 3, 5, 7 days bonds. Ultra short term funds, a few month bonds. Short term funds, few month bonds. FMP, fixed tenure, 1, 2, 3 years usually. Dynamic funds, any kind of bonds, right? So fixed, floating, usually, instruments are either fixed or floating, but let's say these are fixed ones. Then dynamic fund could have a 2 year, 5 year, 7 year, any kind of bond that is available. Income funds usually have long duration bonds or long tenure bonds that are there, 5, 6, 7, 10 years, 15 years kind of bonds. Gilt is government security funds. Right now, technically income and gilt can be interchangeable. We put gilt here even though it is government security because the tenure is the largest, and hence, if we remember, the duration will be the largest, and hence interest rate risk will be the largest. So that's why the risk goes up. And if you're investing in a gilt fund or income fund, your expected return also goes up. Obviously, if you have a dynamic fund that invests only in corporate bonds, then the risk and return expected of that would become higher than the government securities, right? That's basically the debt funds. And then you could have a conservative debt oriented fund that's here. If you're looking at hybrid funds, aggressive debt oriented fund, which means you could have 60% debt or 30% debt or whatever. And then balanced fund, which has more equity than debt. And then dynamic asset allocation, which can go completely into 100% equity if required, right? So obviously, if it can go completely into equity, then the risk would be higher, the expected return would be higher over a period of time. Those are the various kinds of hybrid mutual funds that are available, and those are the risk return profiles of the hybrid mutual funds, right? So quickly to summarize all this, equity funds are funds where you are investing for long term. The various categories of equity funds are available here. Debt funds, safer, longer duration investment and goals, and short duration, but safety is the primary concern in debt funds. Funds with a mix, which are funds which go across equity and debt. Say, I don't want to choose which debt fund and which equity fund, so I just go and buy a balanced fund, which basically does both for me. And others could be real estate, private equity, or international funds, gold funds, exchange traded funds that are there for investments in specific kinds of instruments, right? Those are the final kind of different kind of funds based on categorization of investments that the funds can hold. That's it in this particular section, this particular video. As we end, a couple of questions. Explain any three type of equity mutual funds and arrange them in increasing risk return profile. Explain any three types of debt mutual funds and arrange them as well in terms of increasing risk return profile. Thank you.